Aloha. Aloha, everyone. I'm Brennon Morioka. I'm the Dean for the College of Engineering at University of Hawaii at Mānoa. It's really nice to be back here at the Hawaii Energy Conference. I haven't been back here since I left Hawaiian Electric in 2019, so it's really good to be back. It's always good to be at a conference where you can pretty much see Colton Ching speak almost every day and in every session, so appreciate the invitation. We're very excited, and this is an area or topic dear to my heart. It's something that why I went to Hawaiian Electric in the first place, to be a part of an initiative that Hawaiian Electric was starting with the electrification of transportation. And we have a very good panel here today of experts that are going to talk to us about where we are, what's going on, and maybe some of what their vision of the future is looking like. So very quick introductions of each of our panelists today. First, we have Gregg Kresge, who is with World Resource Institute, also formerly with Maui Electric or Hawaiian Electric, and that's where we got to work with each other. And Gregg was really responsible for some of the real early and initial buildup of the EV infrastructure, the charging infrastructure on Maui. So Gregg was one of the early people involved in this industry. So we owe a lot of the development that we have today to Gregg. Also with us is Aki Marceau. Actually, is that not your? Okay, sorry. I was like having a brain fart on her married name now. So Aki, I've also worked with Aki when we were at HART together. She was also formerly from Elemental Accelerator, and then now with Hawaiian Electric overseeing the electrification of transportation initiatives with Hawaiian Electric on a system-wide basis. We also have Riley Saito, who is he's the energy specialist with Hawaii County, but also spent some time in the service industry, and then also spent a number of years with SunPower before he joined the county as the energy specialist. So thank you, Riley, for joining us. And then, of course, we have my buddy Ed Sniffen with the DOT, where we also work together at the DOT. He's been there forever already, so that's kind of where he is. So we're going to start off with each of our panelists opening with some remarks, and Gregg and Aki have some slides to begin with. So we'll start with Gregg.
Aloha. All right, well, thank you for being here. It's been a great conference. Nice to see a whole bunch of people that I've known for a long time, and also meet some new people. So I'm going to go quickly through these slides because I think you'll get them anyway as part of the materials. So I work for WRI, which is World Resources Institute out of Washington, D.C. We're actually a global nonprofit. I actually am a resident and still live here on Maui. I'm fortunate enough to be able to work for WRI and still be here on Maui. Really focusing on decarbonization, climate goals, reducing greenhouse gases, and also food security as well as water. But the area that I'm specifically involved in is I'm the utility engagement lead for U.S. Energy as well as the electric school bus initiative. Having come from the utility, that probably makes some sense. So I get asked about electric school buses a lot. Basically, what you're going to hear, most of what I'm going to focus on is the last bullet point down there, which is if you can have bidirectional capable medium and heavy duty fleets, and it doesn't necessarily only have to be electric school buses, could be trash trucks, or it could be some other medium or heavy duty fleet that spends a lot of dwell time, meaning that they're not operational, all the time and constantly on the road. They can also be grid assets, and we want them to be grid assets. We want to be able to use these large batteries in these large vehicles. They're a little bit more attractive because they're not being used by individual people all the time. There's not a lot of opt-in, opt-out scenarios. You can aggregate them on a pretty big basis with an entire fleet, and that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for being able to use these as resilient assets with bidirectional capabilities. So here's just a rundown of some of the things that we call V2X, which is the vehicle to grid is part of this, but V2X also incorporates things like just site power. And so you're in some cases that's easier. You're meeting a load at the site that you're on. You're not necessarily sending electrons back to the grid. But if you can do that, you can also offset the need for that electric supply at a certain time at the site. And sometimes you can alleviate peaks. You can shift your energy use. Hopefully, under every case, we advocate for managed charging. We don't ever advocate for non-managed charging. We want these to be grid assets. So here's, we're looking at demand charge mitigation. You guys can read through the list. But one of the things that's super important here in Hawaii is, if we can reduce some of these needs from other parts of the grid, like spinning reserve, where it's extra capacity that isn't exactly being used at that moment, but yet you have that capacity in the generator. If we can reduce that somewhat, then you're also saving on utilizing those resources or even being able to not run as many generation units. And then, of course, energy arbitrage, which might not be as attractive across the nation. I work with utilities from New York, Alaska, California, Texas, all over the place. The biggest and largest need for utilities that I've been hearing is they really want to peak shave. That's the highest and best use. It's like shift that shift that energy, peak shave, reduce the peak so that they don't have to run as many peaker plants and peaking units and less efficient generation. So here's some disaster response opportunities for electric school buses. The ones that we really focus on, and especially attractive to a lot of places, is around meeting some requirement for the community. If there's a grid outage and you have people on dialysis or you have people with medication needs, it's really important that they are able to get refrigeration or they're able to have power to be able to run the devices that they need to stay healthy and alive. So in the South, one of the great examples is in Arizona and Arizona and Texas. We are seeing a real huge need as of this last summer for cooling centers that with these extreme temperatures, people they're having to leave their homes and be able to seek shelter because it's just so hot. It's 119, I think Arizona saw 119 degrees or above for 30 days in a row. If you live in a mobile home, that's not possible. It can't cool down. It can't maintain temperature. So we have a lot of resources. You guys will get the links to this. We give our resources for free. We provide them. There's pitch decks. There's a vehicle to X implementation guide around setting up electric school buses as potential future resources in disaster response. If you've worked in an incident command center or have been a first responder, those resources need to kind of be predetermined and pre-negotiated so that when the disaster strikes, you're not having to go out and negotiate for use of those resources. And that's it. This is my contact information. So thank you very much. And I'll pass it on to Aki.
Thanks, Greg. So can I get a show of hands? Someone actually told me this morning that when they rented their car, their default car was an electric vehicle. And so that kind of piqued my curiosity. Who actually drives or rides an electric vehicle normally, day to day? Awesome. We have a great showing on stage and in the audience, so that's good to see. So on the tails of a somewhat spicy but fair evaluation of our public charging network yesterday, I did want to start with a PSA about best practices in public charging. And so this will kind of prime the conversation.
Aloha! Did you know that Hawaiian Electric has over 25 public electric vehicle fast chargers across Oahu, Hawaii Island, Maui, and Molokai? These public electric vehicle fast chargers provide a typical electric vehicle an additional 40 miles of range in just 15 minutes. In order to have a more pleasant and efficient charging experience, here are some tips on how to charge with Aloha.
Charging with Aloha needs to be kind, courteous, and respectful to each other when using a charging station. This helps to ensure that everyone who needs to charge their EV will get a fair chance to access a charging station. By being considerate of others, you can help minimize wait times and create a positive experience for everyone using the charging station.
As of July 2023, Former fast charging station sites on Oahu offer 2 charging stations. Hawaiian Electric's office on Ward Avenue, Mililani Town Center, Bishop Museum, and Kailua Town Center. At these sites, at least one of our EV stalls is larger than a standard stall to accommodate access for drivers with disabilities. When possible, consider parking in the standard size EV stall if it's available.
Do not unplug other EVs from charging stations. If you need to use a charging station immediately, you can check out the PlugShare app or www.plugshare.com to find an alternative public charging station near you. We greatly appreciate your patience and understanding.
Consider ending your charging session once your EV battery reaches 80% to maximize its lifetime. Most EVs slow the charging rate after it's 80% full, and the last 20% can take even longer to charge than the first 80%. By doing this, our charging stations will be able to serve more EV drivers.
Once your charging session is complete, consider promptly unplugging the charger and moving your EV. This will help reduce wait times and serve more EV drivers. One more tip: if you decide to leave your vehicle during your charging session, we recommend that you set an alarm to notify yourself when it's time to return to your vehicle so that another person can charge.
After you've concluded your charging session, please place the connector securely back in its designated holster. This will help prevent damage to the connector and avoid creating a tripping hazard for others.
It's easier for everyone to drive green when we work together to provide charging opportunities for all. And charging with Aloha at our fast charging stations will help make the charging experience a positive one for all EV drivers. For more information on EVs and Hawaiian Electric's EV programs, please visit hawaiianelectric.com/goev. Mahalo for watching.
We look forward to seeing you charge with Aloha.
Okay, so there's a reason why we all work at Hawaiian Electric and not for the Actors Guild or on stage or anything like that. But one of the exciting things about our public charging network that we own and operate right now is actually within the last year, we've seen a 50% increase in charging use, which is significantly higher than we've seen in prior years. And then overall, across all of our EV rates, so the ones that even Ed's team uses to run their public charging program, we've seen a 150% increase in EV charging overall on those rates. And so we're really seeing that, we always anticipated a point of inflection to happen soon, but we're really seeing that starting to happen right now. And so it's really exciting to see all of that use. In addition to that, I just wanted to highlight 2 additional initiatives that aren't focused necessarily on Hawaiian Electric owned and operated programs, but third parties. So one is our EV charger siting tool, and the other one is our Smart Charge telematics pilot. And the EV charger siting tool was developed because we had worked with a number of third-party charging installers. So folks like HDOT, and then I'm sure you can imagine other installers that develop big charging hubs. And they would come to us and say, where's the best place to put charging stations? Or conversely, where's the worst place to put charging stations as it pertains to the grid? So they're looking at a number of different variables like access and where people live and where people might charge based off of their own vehicle telematics and that type of thing. But they really wanted to know from Hawaiian Electric's perspective where might be the areas where there's enough capacity on the grid. And we didn't really have a easy way to do that high-level assessment at first glance across our service territory. It would have required a service request and then, a lot of kind of site-specific analysis, which just isn't helpful, at that stage, at that initial stage for these charging providers. And so, as a result, we did some research and saw that there were maybe a dozen other utilities that were building out these charger siting tools. And so what we were able to do is evaluate our grid and see how we can provide information about where there might be available capacity or where capacity might be constrained for charger installations that are 500 kW and above. And so that's the result. I'm just showing on this slide what Maui looks like, but we have maps for every single island in our service territory. And so if you want to check it out, you can look at the QR code. It'll link you to the website, and it's really a self-serve tool. The caveat is that this does not displace or avoid the need for a site-specific service request, but it does help identify areas that might be more constrained. And that would, of course, add potentially cost and time to a development. So we just rolled this out last month. We're open to feedback. Please check it out and let us know what you think about it. And then the second initiative is our Smart Charge Hawaii telematics pilot. And so we unveiled this about a year ago. And one of the things that we really wanted to understand was where people were charging, how they were charging, their state of charge. And believe it or not, a lot of people think that we have eyes on every vehicle. We don't. We have no idea where people are charging and how people are charging. This gives us the ability to understand that. And so by signing up, and it's not too late to sign up, so everyone who raised their hand who drives an EV, please sign up. You can get either $150 or 10,000 Hawaiian miles, whatever you choose, and to participate. And what it does is it gives you visibility in your charging behavior. And then on the flip side, or conversely, what it also does, it helps entities like Hawaiian Electric, as well as our partners, so state and local government, among others, to see in an anonymized format how people are charging, the types of vehicles they're using, the times of day, the state of charge. And this is the first step to helping us identify how we can develop programs that can both optimize the grid and really, really serve this growing customer base of EV drivers. So that's it for right now, and then I'll pass it on to Riley, and we can engage in a conversation.
All right, thank you, Aki. No, thank you. So I'm going to spend some time on the other EV that gets little visibility, and it's the fuel cell electric vehicle. It's powered by the hydrogen element. And I speak about this because within Hawaii County, it's a very unique environment from the rest of the state. It's 4,000 square miles, the size of Connecticut. You can actually fit the island of Kauai in the district of Puna. And the elevation changes are, average elevation is about 3,800 feet. The highest point on Oahu is 4,000 square feet. Our average is 3,800 feet. So those are challenging elements of energy use for a battery electric vehicle. And so distance, the elevation change, which is then bundled with climate control necessary for internal temperature, either heating or cooling. We have a population of about 200,000. We have 200,000 vehicles, so almost everybody gets a vehicle. And so that accounts for, transportation accounts for 59% of our greenhouse gas emissions versus 36% on Oahu and 24% nationally. So we do have a very high need of zero emission vehicle transformation, and we're looking at hydrogen to do that. And so the initial phase is through mass transit or our heavy duty vehicles, where we're pursuing, we've got several grants in line that have been awarded. About 20 million of that has been awarded to obtain fuel cell buses. 6 of them, we already have 3 lined up for by the end of this year. We have 1 operating, actually servicing the public, and we have a hydrogen production and fueling station. So we're going to expand that, have it powered, the hydrogen production powered by photovoltaics. It'll be green electrolyzer hydrogen that can fuel the total of 9 buses on, and this will be located, well, it will be, it's intended to locate, we still got a lot of paperwork to do, at NELHA, the Natural Energy Laboratory of Hawaii Authority, and we have support of Department of Transportation, Highways. We're This year, with the SHOTC mark, we were able to obtain an approval of $9.5 million. So that brought our total up to $28 million in federal funding to work on the actual implementation of hydrogen vehicles. We'll then be able to get a lot of data on real world implementation of the other electric vehicle, the fuel cell electric vehicle. Okay, thank you. Ed?
Aloha, Ed Sniffen from Hawaii DOT. Awesome working with these partners up here. It helps us in our mission to make sure that we can green our operations a lot more, especially with HECO. When we move forward with the federal government on the NEVI program that they have, that they're allowing funding for throughout, it required a robust public outreach program. We didn't want to do it, so we just used theirs. I mean, they had all the information available already. They reached out to all the communities. They already had the network set up on where would be the best areas for the charging stations. So we used theirs to cite our 13 locations that we have across the state. We kind of started our greening in about 2015 when we went forward on our $300 million ESCO program that cut our energy consumption by 40% from that time frame. We maxed out all the rooftops on all of our airports throughout that process. We made sure that we changed out all of our fixtures on our highway system and put PV on all of our base yards to ensure that we're ready for the conversions as we go forward. And we keep upgrading them because we know the need for power is going to go up, especially because we're converting all of our vehicles out there. In 2019, we moved forward on a contract that allows us to purchase the service of vehicles and charging stations for our state and county governments. Since then, we've changed out about 190 electric vehicles, including light-duty trucks, buses, our wiki shuttles and the like, through that area, and more importantly, added about 180 level 2 and fast chargers throughout the state system. More are going at the airports very soon to ensure that we can support more electric vehicles there, and more are going in at the harbors as well. We use that contract to ensure that we could upgrade our electrical systems on airports so we can have PCR. Right now, when the airplanes come in, when they park, they used to leave the engines running so they cool the airplane. Now they turn them off, plug in, and make sure that they can cool everything off that way. So we're trying to see how we can reduce emissions from that perspective. Doing the same thing at harbors. With our $550 million KCT project, $80 million is going towards electrified cranes for Pasha. This is going to support other electrification on their ground support equipment in that area, adding more PV to the terminal spaces out there to ensure that we have that clean energy that can power most of our stations out there. When we started moving forward on the electrification of our fleets, it was, of course, to make sure that the government could lead and move forward on the electrification. We bought 43 Teslas, and I'm not going to apologize for it. They're really good vehicles. They were the best deal that we had, and the maintenance is amazing. But what it allowed us to do is every 7 years we're going to change out those vehicles, and when we do, we're going to push them into the local market to ensure that we can drive more conversions of the public fleets out there or the private fleets. Some people just can't afford a brand new vehicle, but ours are going to be in really good conditions in the 7-year time frame when we change them out, and we want to make sure we can push them back into the industry. The pushes in those areas are all because we get support from a lot of our partners on stage here and out in the audience there. Definitely, more's got to be done. We were trying to do our part as we get to our 2030 and 2045 clean energy goals without knowing what our part actually is. Energy Office put out a report at the end of last year that said, here's your part. 2035, all clean energy vehicles. 1.4 million vehicles in this state is going to have to get converted from that time frame going forward. That's a big thing. So our 190 vehicles are a start, I mean, in the right direction. But the charging stations that are necessary, we're looking at 5 to 1 per vehicle and the like. So there's a lot more work that's got to be done. The good thing is there's a lot of partnerships and there's a lot of federal monies that are available specifically for this. In addition to all of this, we're hopeful that we're not going to have 1.4 million vehicles throughout the state. So we're piloting autonomous vehicles in different locations at our airports with UH on their campuses to ensure that we can check that last mile on public transit to see if there's better ways to operate our system, hopefully to bring those numbers down a bit. We're also adjusting the infrastructure in our system to ensure that we can hopefully better connect you from your origin to your goods, services, and opportunities in better ways, especially capitalizing on micromobility in different areas. So we're going to be, as the DOT, we're going to be getting into land use quite a bit. Hopefully we can connect you where you live to where you're going to go a lot better in a lot shorter distance to ensure that you could walk or bike or scoot or e-bike or whatever it may be that could get you to your destination a lot faster. That's the push right now, and that's the hope that we can all partner on together.
All right, and I do have a lot of questions coming in, but I want to first start off with some of the questions that I have in terms of some of the bigger picture issues. 2015, 2016, 2017 timeframe, a lot of conversation on trying to tag onto the whole clean energy initiatives, right? And applying that to clean transportation. And the conversation back then was always about 100% EV adoption, right? And to some degree, it still continues today. I mean, you mentioned it in the HSEO plan. From your perspectives, and we have both the utility, vendors, government agencies that have to implement, where do you think, from your perspectives, in the seat that you sit, where are we with the whole clean transportation initiative, and is 100% EV adoption even possible? Especially in the time frame that we've allotted. I mean, 2035, 2045, is that even realistic?
All right. I happen to have these statistics right off the top of my head. Actually, I can tell you where we're at with the school bus transformation. So we have a goal, a really ambitious goal of having all school buses, that's 500,000 across the nation in the United States, that we would like to have electrified by 2030. That's a really super ambitious goal. Probably not as achievable. However, we're making huge gains in adoption. We are now at just 0.5% of that number. So of 500,000, we're at about 0.5% right now. With the new Clean School Bus Program funding that came from the IRA funding, that has now added, we're going to be at 1%. So we have a long way to go. But I think that what we're doing is, and I'm going to give my optimistic view right now, which is, I think there's two things. One is we're seeing incredible increases in momentum around adoption of clean fuel technologies, not just battery, but other things as well. And then in addition to that, we are trying to add on the value proposition, right? This is not just a transportation device. This now, when we're talking about resilience, this can be, it's sitting for 95% of its life. 180 school days a year, 185 non-school days a year, somewhere around there. 24 hours a day, it's used maybe 5 hours of school days. So we're talking about, hey, what can this do for us as a community, as a population? How can we utilize this resource, which is actually very expensive at this point, but utilize it for another purpose that benefits everybody? So very optimistic about that. Lots of encouragement, tons of people really interested, because I think the potential is amazing.
To follow on to Gregg's optimism, and I don't think any of us would be sitting up here if we weren't just natural optimists to begin with. Slight technical clarification. So when people kind of try and compare the electric vehicle transition to the cell phone transition, and I don't think it's really a fair comparison, because it's not that, it definitely used to not be that expensive to buy a cell phone. It's kind of a little bit more expensive over the years. But people will not hold on to the same cell phone for 12, 15, 20 years, but people will hold on to the same vehicle for that long, especially in Hawaii. And so I think when we talk about is it 100% or whatnot, we really need to start thinking about is it 100% sales that we're aiming for, or 100% ownership? The ownership side, we essentially have to get to 100% sales within the next 2 or 3 years, which, I don't think that's possible, not to be the bearer of bad news. But I do think that, if we work collectively together, we could probably get to the 100% sales benchmarks that we're aiming for. And I'll also add on to that is that it's not going to happen passively. It's not going to just magically happen. It's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of funding, and a lot of collaboration from all parties, and oftentimes unsuspecting partnerships, whether it's, working with fleet operators, utilities and DOTs and nonprofit organizations and universities, those types of really unsuspecting partnerships. That's what it's going to take. So yes, but with a small asterisk.
Yes, with a big asterisk. Yeah, I say yes, but it'll take a transformation of how we behave as a society and what we value. We value the single occupied vehicle. That would need to change in order to meet the goal. The assets of government for mobility and transportation gets used 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, primarily during the daytime. If those assets were available for nonprofits and low-income families to utilize for transportation at night, 7 days a week, and on weekends and holidays. Weekends and holidays are about 117 days a year. So those assets sit idle. So the concept is shared use mobility of various mobility devices. And so it could be bicycles, electric bicycles, scooters. It could be, currently we have free bus rides in Hawaii County, which is tied to the use of a shared use bicycle. Things like that would need to then reduce the volume of the 200,000 vehicles on the island. But the vehicles on the island would be zero emissions with a higher productivity, more vehicle miles. So you're replacing, the GHG output miles to zero emission miles. And that's a combination of ownership, change in policy, change in government actually utilizing the people's asset and make it available to the people. That may bring up about 100,000 legal hurdles and the insurance companies and whoever else, but it is possible if we get together and try and figure that out. Now with government, we also have a chicken and egg thing because we have the chickens running around in vehicles. But we have facilities that can be the chicken that charge and fuel the vehicles. So with government, we can solve some of this and enable the private sector to then latch on and gain momentum in that charging is available. Hydrogen is available to refuel in 10 minutes. It is available, it is affordable. The price and the economics are levelized for 20-25 years. Then the people of our community will jump on. And so it is possible, asterisk, big one, yes.
I don't know how to top that. That was perfect. From my perspective, if we use the technologies we have right now, with the land use we have right now, absolutely, positively, no. Zero chance. Both of those got to change. Making sure that we look at other options to go to clean energy, making sure that we readjust land use. Because, and just be honest, how many from Oahu in this room? How many of you in this room voted for rail? How many of you in this room voted for rail so that the person next to you in the other car would ride rail? Right? I mean, so seriously, the whole discussion on mass transit is a difficult one because it doesn't necessarily fit everybody's lifestyle. We have 3 kids in our family. No way I get back home from work to get them from their school, to take them to their practice on a bus. Doesn't work like that. But if we readjust land use in different areas to make sure that we can make it easier for everybody to live in different areas and use fuel efficiency and use mass transit, then we got a chance. But we got to make those huge adjustments from a policy perspective in order to get there. But while we're doing that, pushing forward on the new technologies to ensure that we can be cleaner as we go, and planting a ton of trees to make sure we have a bunch of sinks to make sure we can hit some of our goals is going to be super important for us.
And I appreciate the fact that many of you are also touching on the fact that it's multifaceted, and it's not only about the vehicles themselves, it's about the other technologies like fuels, right? So it really encompasses a lot of things. And I like your point, Riley, about culture change, right? And changing people's perceptions on mobility, especially shared mobility, having been in that space and being the person called the devil for changing the zipper lane from HOV2 to HOV3. So I get it, and yes, it is hard, but I do believe that it's necessary. And I do have a lot of questions coming through, and I appreciate all of that. And so hopefully the line of questioning that I have, it will, through the conversations, will address many of your questions, because some of them are kind of pertinent. And so early on, part of the obstacle for EV adoption was range anxiety, right? And so, but with the technology, as we talk about improved technologies over time, and it will continue to improve, range is not really the issue so much anymore as it is now. And Aki kind of touched on it with the op-ed in Civil Beat. It's accessibility and the reliability of charging. Right, so maybe touch upon some of that, and where does that fit in, and where are we? I know HECO is doing a lot to install infrastructure, and DOT and the counties, because of some of the federal monies, have a lot of opportunities there. So where do you see that going, and how we're doing a lot, but is that enough, and how short are we?
I'll kick things off and allow others to chime in. So I guess, yes, range anxiety is less anxiety inducing these days, but it actually depends on, transportation is just so location specific. So let's say you're living in the North Shore and commute to town every day. There's still a lot of range anxiety there, especially if you have an older vehicle. Similarly, across different islands, there's various levels of charging available. So Big Island, Maui, they don't have the same level of fast charging available as, say, Oahu. So from our experience talking to customers, talking to folks that live on those islands, there's still a lot of range anxiety. So I don't want to dismiss that. But what we are seeing that we haven't seen in the past is something called queuing anxiety. So, transportation just is full of anxiety. I don't know why we choose to use that term. And so what that really indicates to us is that at every site, we actually need more charging available. So it's not, in the past, we used to just put one charging station or one 50 kW fast charger at a location. And what we're seeing is that there's actually a need for larger hubs. And I think you're going to start seeing that more and more across, our service territory, across the state and across the nation. We are, I think, second to last in terms of charging ports per EV driver, but we're actually second or third. We're always in the top 3 in terms of number of EV drivers per capita. So to me, what that indicates is that we just have a dearth of charging for our EV driving community. And Hawaiian Electric does have a proposal right now to expand our public charging network to 75 additional locations. Currently, we're tapped out in terms of what we specifically can do. But what we've been doing is focusing our efforts in the meantime on, one, improving our network, our reliability, our maintenance and repair, and 2, really supporting third-party installers, which, that's what the siting tool was for. We've been working so closely with HDOT hand in hand to ensure that they're able to have a smooth installation and, service connection process and that type of thing. So just a fun fact. I'm actually curious if anyone knows this. I recently read a grant application from the state of Maine, and they said Tesla has, so there's 9,500 electric vehicles in Maine. In Hawaii, there's about 30,000, right? Tesla has, well, actually, I'll switch it around. Hawaii has 6 Tesla charging stations. How many do you think that Maine has? And actually, I know I'm not the moderator, but I'll ask this group. Take a wild guess. Anyone?
12.
200.
95.
Oh, Riley must have read the report.
Yeah, I did.
87. 87.
You put it in your email.
Oh yeah, you were on that email thread. Anyway, so to answer your question, Brennan, that really indicates to me that, we have a long way to go, both in terms of, potentially utility owned and operated as well as third party owned and operated charging stations.
I want to jump in real quick here because I just want to show that technology does change, right? And it's changing very rapidly. So when I used to work for Hawaiian Electric in the electrification of transportation, one of the two biggest obstacles for us to have, say, the rental car industry adopt EVs was Haleakala and Hana. Like there's no charging. And the vehicles weren't up to 300-mile range at that point. You had Nissan Leafs or, lower range vehicles early on. EVs were having a really difficult time because the charging infrastructure wasn't there, and we couldn't get in high capacity chargers or DC fast chargers with the infrastructure that we had. Now you fast forward to today, 300-mile vehicles are pretty common. That charging infrastructure up at the summit of Haleakala or out in Hana may not necessarily be the most important thing anymore. Yes, charging is still super important, but now you have these longer range vehicles that allow you to get out there. If you have a full charge in your vehicle, you can make it out there, regenerative braking. I go out 176 miles on my car. I come back, I still have 100 and something miles on my car after I've driven 120 miles. So I think we're seeing huge advancements in technology that we also are going to have to incorporate as we move along. So we are at this current state of affairs, but realizing that we do need to incorporate that there's going to be technology changes that are going to make that very different soon.
Anything? No, just to... on the comment on the range, and this is Harry from Big Island, okay? And folks, they got their Teslas, new Tesla, goes from Hilo to Kona. And remember, that's a 6,800-foot elevation climb 25 miles from Hilo to get to Kona, right? He called me and he said, Rai, can you put in a charging station at Mauna Kea Park? I go, why? I just drove my new Tesla from Hilo to Kona. Coming back from Kona, I was down to 5% when I hit the park. Of course, he regenerated so downhill to Hilo, so he made it. But that's one of the unique situations with the Big Island, is the elevation really eats up the energy on the zero-emission vehicles. And that's why we strongly are considering and moving forward with hydrogen and fuel cell vehicles as a mix, not the singular solution.
And that totally makes sense. But by the way, Harry didn't make it. He ran out of charge just before he got to Hilo. So in the NEVI program, we have 13 sites that we have to build out throughout the system. And one of them is going to be along that route. And we're going to put his name on it to make sure that it's his station. The cool thing about that NEVI funding that we get about $2 million a year, and it's not a lot, especially considering that the one we just put in our first one in February in Maui, in the Kahului Park and Ride. So you guys should go by and check it out. It's a 4-port 150, really good, really nice setup. You can charge it real quick over there. 13 of them are going to go throughout the state. And once we're done with the 13, we can put that NEVI funding wherever we think we need it. As Aki was talking about, a lot of the EV owners right now throughout the state charge up at home. So for us, we have 2 electric vehicles. We always charge it at home. So I don't know where any of the charging stations are throughout the state. But once we start putting up in different areas, then those that cannot get an electric vehicle now because they live in a multifamily unit or the like, can now have places to go to. So that's the push for us. Putting these NEVI chargers in areas where it's required first to fulfill the plan is going to be done by the end of this year. So we can move forward very quickly on putting them in the areas that we know we need them. And that's the push that we're making with Hawaiian Electric now.
Okay, so Ed, I wanted to move on a little bit off of electric vehicles because when we talk about clean transportation, it's we talk about the whole transportation modes, but we always end up back at electric vehicles. But Ed kind of mentioned a little bit already about maritime and aviation. But even in that mentioning, you only talked about the support systems, right? The preconditioned air, the ground support services, the cranes, the lifts. But what about, because when we talk about clean transportation too, a lot of people talk not about the clean transportation, but about the decarbonization aspects of it, right? And so we know that ships and airplanes are the largest transportation contributors of carbon emissions. So where do you folks think we are with an electric plane or an electric ship?
We're just starting out right now, working with our partners at the airlines and working with our shipping partners. They're just starting out on conversions. When we talk to airlines, SAF is the big thing for them right now. They're not even talking about pushing to electric planes at this time. We're working with a consortium that includes some of the airlines that's funding an initiative to push for a 9-seater electric plane that lands in the water that can go inter-island. But that's a push that they're making for 26 at the earliest, end of 26 at the earliest, that could possibly be pushed out to 28 to make sure that the technology is sufficient, but also the capacities are good enough to run our inter-islands. On the shipping side, Matson has switched to dual fuel vehicles. They can run LNG and their normal ice or their normal fuel. And Pasha's moved on to LNG as well. It's a quick conversion for them to go to hydrogen right after that. But it's got to be an available fuel source. So Riley got to hurry up. I mean, it's but this is the push though. I mean, really, the 25% of GHG emissions comes from transportation. Our push towards electrification or towards alternative fuels is to ensure that we put all of our load on HECO. I mean, really, we want to dump all of our dirty fuel on HECO, and so we can electrify it. And not because we want to blame it on them. We want to make sure that we can give them the load that's necessary for them to start converting. So when they can convert to hydrogen quick starts or whatever it may be, then we really become a net zero type of state. And then we really become a lot more energy resilient in our state, because Riley's going to be producing it and the others are going to be producing a lot of the hydrogen that could go into those operations. So, I mean, that's the push that we're trying to make.
And maybe add to, because we talked earlier about this, right, is when we talk about electrification of transportation, we talk about the actual mobility aspects. But, we were talking about the whole other aspects that's the benefit of electrifying, and that's energy security. So, I mean, maybe from the state's perspective.
Yeah, when Brennan knows this better than most. When we meet with all of the heads of DOTs in all of the states, 50 states and 2 territories. You can all understand. When we sit around that table, you see a lot of reds and blues all around there. When we talk about issues like this, about resilience, about safety and the like, you don't even see the colors. So if you were sitting in that room, you wouldn't know who's from Texas or who's from Oregon or who's from Washington. All of the discussions are the same because we come up with language that we can all agree to. There are some people in the state who just don't believe in the climate crisis. They don't believe that we need to start moving forward on clean energy to ensure our future for Hawaii and our future for the world. But they all agree that we should be energy sufficient or energy secure here. When we start talking about the need to push towards electrification and other fuel sources to ensure that we can be secure here. I don't know if many know in this room, we got 14 days worth of goods on the islands. If we had an event that affected our shipping for more than 14 days and we don't get anything else coming in from planes, we're hosed. We just don't have enough here. And that includes fuel in a lot of areas. So this energy security piece resonates with a lot of people. We try to use as much language as possible to ensure that we can excite people to move forward in the direction that we all believe is in the best interest of the state. And when we start talking about energy security, making sure that we can push in that direction, it gets people on board.
So when Ed runs for office, it's Friends for Ed Sniffen. So
yes, friends.
Go ahead, Riley. Go ahead. What, you running for office too, Riley?
No, I walk to the office. Government is slow. No, real quick on that, the SA, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel, SAF. It's a combination of hydrogen and carbon dioxide. You combine those two and you get kerosene. So the carbon dioxide, you can do direct carbon capture, or you can take anaerobic digestion of biomass that creates methane that then becomes an energy fuel. You separate the carbon dioxide and you use the hydrogen to combine, and you end up with an airline fuel. So that's part of the portfolio of things that the County of Hawaii is looking at, is actual biomass to produce airline fuel.
Okay, we're getting close to the end, and Riley has to catch a plane back to Hilo very soon. So I want to end with one last thought from each panelist, and it's a thought of optimism. And so if you each can leave us with, Gregg said he has a whole head full because he's the ultimate optimist. So.
I wouldn't be in my job if I wasn't optimistic. But I would say, I think I'm seeing a lot of movement in this space across the board, and a lot of it is for good. And I think one of the big things that's optimistic for me, especially when it comes to battery electric vehicles in particular, is we're seeing a lot of movement on the recycling front, where we're not hopefully going to have to constantly mine new resources, that these resources can be reclaimed. So there's a lot of effort being made right now in the recycling of existing electric vehicle batteries, in addition to these larger batteries, and or repurposing for, say, grid use. Maybe they're not good for transportation any longer, but they can be repurposed and aggregated to be stationary storage. So that's my optimistic approach.
I'll use a very technical transportation term. Is anyone familiar with the term precious cargo? So precious cargo is this, and it's actually a technical term in the transportation sector. So, you know, school buses carry precious cargo, and really that's my optimism and my inspiration. When I see my 2-year-old son, when I see you know, all the keiki, they don't overthink things, they just act. And I really appreciate that, and that's my inspiration. And they also, you know, are learning to work together and share and collaborate. And there's gonna be a lot of technical solutions that will solve a lot of our problems, but they won't be successful unless we're working together. And so I think we have the right people in the room, and all we need to do is just act and take inspiration from our precious cargo.
I got to make this short because I got to catch a plane. Let's go!
I will say, our 2045 goals are very, very lofty. So I cannot say whether or not we're going to hit them. But I can say that moving in that direction with this group, and ensuring that we make things more secure from an energy perspective, make things a lot cleaner from an environmental perspective, and make our economy a lot better overall, is going to make Hawaii better anyway, regardless of whether we hit those goals or not. So pushing on that direction is the most important thing.
All right, thank you. And I do truly believe in this effort in clean transportation. I wouldn't have been a part of a lot of what we've done if I didn't. And to the point where when I left Hawaiian Electric and went to the University of Hawaii, Murray Clay, who I think might still be around, he's the one who challenged me when he found out we have a Formula race car student project every year. It's a national competition, but the University of Hawaii has always done a combustible engine version of it. He challenged me to change it to an electric battery version, which we did. And so because we have two of our major sponsors for this, because it costs us about $60,000 a year to do it, Ulupono Initiative and Hawaiian Electric are two huge investors, as well as Surfco in this project. But this is us as a university trying to live the talk, but also, there's been a lot of talk today about workforce development, right? We need workforce in this space, and if we don't educate our engineers and our students and our younger generation to work in this area and be familiar with the kind of work that requires the kinds of skill sets, then we're kind of going to be on the back end as well. So we at the university are trying to do our part as well. So I do. And before I thank our panelists and we go, I have one question that I was asked to ask Ed. It's a special question because he's Mr. Speed Hump in all, not just Honolulu, but all of the state of Hawaii. Did you take into account the low profile of the EVs in the design of the speed humps?
Yes, we did. But that being said, we have 220 of them, so test it out.
So please join me in thanking our panelists. They were great. I appreciate it. Aloha, and thank you for enjoy the rest of the day.